It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. One of life's biggest mysteries is why media darling of the left, Alastair Campbell, is held up as a pillar of authority in this country despite his shameful past as Tony Blair's Iraq spin doctor. Well, maybe that will now change in the wake of this vulgar tweet yesterday where he said he didn't believe Boris Johnson nearly died of COVID during the pandemic. Boris ally Nadine Dorries swiftly put the swivel-eyed conspiracy theorist in his place, blasting, "There is a horrible hatred and sickness which resides in the heart of some people who are so partisan and so politically obsessed that they lose all sense of humanity. You are beyond help or hope." So, Kelvin Mackenzie, what I want to ask you is why this ranting, hateful and now conspiracy theorist rabble-rouser remains the commentator of choice for Sky News, the BBC and Channel 4.
Well, if you're in the media, you are, with the exception, I imagine, of GBNews, you are of the left. And therefore, you go to somebody you know is going to be safe for them. You're not going to say anything. I mean, Clarkson had a great thing the other day where he said he was going on the One show. Before we went on it, the producer said to him, he said, "Look, don't attack the public sector workers, will you? Because that would be awkward." Right. So you know, a huge thought process from a very successful bloke is not allowed. If you are a producer for a mainstream television program, you are not interested in a view from the centre right. You're just not getting on there. You ask any of your panellists over the week. What I can't understand about Campbell, who has a shocking background associated with sending us to a war. By the way, Blair still gets on television, unbelievably, sending us to a war which has led the whole of the Middle East, even today, 20 years later, in complete uproar. What I can't understand is we have to be very, very gentle about Mr. Campbell's mental health issues, which he carries forward as a big kind of blob in front of him when he's interviewed. And yet, when somebody almost dies, and even if they didn't almost die, so they are in intensive care for 3 days. That's close enough, especially with thousands of people dying in intensive care, right? He has no sympathy whatsoever for that man. Isn't that an incredible state? Why on earth shouldn't we let Campbell have it over his mental health? Why should I believe he has a mental health issue? He doesn't even believe what he sees when somebody is lying in a major London teaching hospital, right, for 3 days in intensive care. He's now saying there's a question mark about it, or frankly, I don't believe it. Campbell is a shocker. What he does know, by the way, is that appearing regularly on television has two effects. One, his social media following goes up, because there are a load of mad lefties out there who love all this thing. And also, he gets invited to make speeches and the like to ridiculous charitable organisations, paying him 10, 15, 20, 25 grand a pop. The cash is piling in.
Of course.
There is,
and of course, look, I won't stoop to his
nothing
level.
Not to like.
No, and I won't stoop to his level. If he says he's unwell, fine, I believe it. But what I think is so despicable about what he said regarding Boris Johnson is he's not just accusing Boris Johnson of being a liar, he's accusing the staff in the hospital who looked after Boris Johnson, who, by the way, never shared Boris Johnson's political views, of lying as well, and that's particularly disgusting. And by the way, we saw this really recently, didn't we, with the Gary Lineker debacle over the last couple of weeks, the way that he was used as a pro-Lineker voice, again, on the BBC, on Sky News, on Channel 4, all the usual suspects, and no one ever bothered to reveal that he makes a podcast for Lineker's media company. So there's actually a financial motivation for him to back Lineker, and that was never revealed at the start of these interviews. So it's astonishing to me.
Right, if you're of the left, right, money comes at you very secretly and nobody wants to talk about it, but it just goes very nicely into the old bank account like that. If you make money on the right, there's a huge outcry. We've just seen it with Rishi. I'm delighted. Last year, he paid £432,000 in tax. That's a lot of teachers. That's a lot of nurses. Yeah. And not only that, makes a change from the scumbags on the left who are basically born with both hands out, wanting their lives to be subsidised. And yet nobody ever says anything that, hey, that's a very good thing that guy makes money.
Yeah, because we got Starmer's tax return to do today too, Kelvin. So Starmer paid £118,000 in tax over the last 2 years compared to Sunak's £1 million.
Right, I'd rather we had 100 Sunaks playing that than 100 Starmers. In fact, being a lawyer, I would prefer that he wasn't in work at all, to be frank with you. But the reality is, all the time, the left get a free ride, either over money, over morality, over social media, anything like that. They're fine. Anybody on the right says anything, they have to be uncancelled. It is astonishing that a Campbell figure could survive the sexed up dossier allegations, or that could survive, even if they weren't true, right? Even if they weren't true, they could survive a war, right? Which nobody wanted, which cost 175 of our people their lives. How on earth does this happen? It never happens to the right. We are going to need to change the way that the media is run in our country. No newspaper anymore will run any kind of, quotes, dodgy story of any kind, normally involving race, right? Because they think that the advertising community will actually boycott them. What a shocking position.
Well, Kelvin, I was shocked. Someone pointed out to me earlier, the front page of the Metro newspaper, I think it's tomorrow, big Burger King ad emblazoned over the front page of the Metro, talking all about how Boris Johnson has told a lot of whoppers at the Privileges Committee hearing. It just shows you, doesn't it? Yeah. It just shows you that the advertising community are so in their left-wing London bubble that they just assume when they're advertising to the entire country that everyone's going to agree with their woke advertising executives that Boris Johnson is crooked. And I thought it's another example of how the advertising industry now is so influential in terms of limiting media debate.
Well, that may be true. I don't think you need to worry about the Metro for much longer, by the way, because I'm afraid that's probably one of the last of their ads. They're not doing very well. And unfortunately, they're culling a load of journalists, as journalists are being...
Which is a shame because, good newspaper.
Anybody who exposes anything of any kind these days is unwanted within most media organisations. It's a very, very bad... It's a very bad world to want to go into.
Yeah, what a sad state of affairs for the former editor of The Sun to say that. Kelvin Mackenzie, thank you so much. We will speak on Monday night.